My name is Yusuf, and in the next few minutes, I would plan to just do a walkthrough on Flutter, give you all a brief introduction to Flutter, and what I plan to do, what I plan to talk about is what is Flutter, and why do we use Flutter? What are the advantages and disadvantages of using Flutter? And then we would compare Flutter versus React Native, and then we would ask the question whether to use Flutter or React Native. So let me just dive through and get started with. So what is Flutter? So Flutter is, in very simple terms, it is actually just a framework which is based on a programming language called Dart. It is actually a very simple yet an attractive and a high performance framework based on a programming language, actually based on an object-oriented programming language called Dart. And yeah, of course, it is a free and open source mobile UI framework, which was created by Google back in 2018. And this is very well known for its single code base for iOS, Android, and web. So this app SDK is actually used for building very high fidelity and efficient apps for Android, iOS, and the web, and all of this with a single code base. So this is actually the standing out point for Flutter. So then moving on, why Flutter? Why choose Flutter? So again, back to what I said earlier, it's single code base. This has a huge plus point. It gives actually many plus points to the developers because a single code base can actually save a lot of time because the developer wouldn't have to have a separate code base for Android and another code base for iOS. And even say if the developer has to make some updates to his application, he would not have to have a separate update for iOS and another one for Android. It will all just be one single update. So that is actually a huge plus point for Flutter, and that is the reason why it is a bit it caught up the market. That is one of the reasons. And it is also very well known for its good layout methodology, which is borrowed from the responsive webs. So this means the developers can find it very easy to make very clean and responsive apps, that might suit any device sizes. So that is again another plus point for Flutter. And Flutter, like I mentioned earlier, it uses the Dart programming language, which is again an object-oriented programming language. And this is actually effortless to learn, given that you have a background in maybe OOP. So it's something not that challenging to learn. And Flutter is also known very well for its fast development and for the high performance it has. And moving on, let's talk about the advantages of using Flutter. First things first, the language which Flutter uses, Dart, it has a large repository of software packages. So what this does is this allows to extend the capabilities of a mobile application. And again, coming back to the one code base, this is something again, it has so many plus points. Even though it increases the developer's time. I mean, it reduces the developer's time. It also reduces the time taken to test the application. Reason being, because you can just write an automated test and it can be done only once. Only one automated test is sufficient. You don't have to have, again, separate tests for Android and for iOS. So this saves a lot of time. And one good thing about Flutter is the developers have more control over the widgets and their layouts. And it is also known to be very powerful and impressive. Reason being, it has the customizational capability and also its extensibility. So that makes it very powerful and impressive. And Flutter also comes with this cool hot reload feature. So actually, before this feature was, before it was launched in Flutter, if you had to make any changes in an application, say if you wanted to add a background color or change the font size or add a button or anything, it would take the developer at least at least 10 seconds to visualize the changes that he has made. But what Flutter did was they helped this issue by having the hot reload feature. So with this, you can almost instantly visualize the changes that you have made. And this, again, it improves the speed for development because, I mean, you can very quickly build UIs and you can, quickly add and test your features and fix bugs and errors as well. And moving on to its disadvantages, it obviously has a few drawbacks as well. So Dart is a new coding language. So even though it is not that hard to learn, it is still a new coding language. It might take some time for you to master that language. And this is again another framework for app development. Developers can find it difficult to choose the right uh, development tool. So this might take a while, and that is one drawback as well. And actually, a major drawback for Flutter is its small and growing community. Since Flutter was on and about very recently, since 2018, it has a very small community, and this means you might not have a lot of developers. You might not have a lot of resources, maybe like lectures or tutorials. And even online, if you have certain issues, certain errors, certain bugs, you might find it difficult to clear it online. But again, with time, that should be okay since Flutter is gaining some exposure now. And since again it is new, you might not be able to figure out some errors and some bugs since it is relatively new. But again, like the previous point I mentioned, with time, this also can be overcome. And yeah, moving on to Flutter versus React Native. Let's compare the two of them. So Flutter was created by Google in 2018, which is quite recently. And on the other hand, React Native was created by Facebook back in 2015. So it has been in the market for quite some time. Therefore, it has its exposure and it is famous because many applications have been built through React Native. And Flutter uses the Dart programming language. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it is a growing community, while React uses JavaScript. So for JavaScript, you have a huge community, right? You have a lot of resources, a lot of tutorials, lectures, books, you name it. And you actually have millions of codes that you can just use and you can edit it into your application to your liking. Flutter comes with comprehensive library actually of UI widgets, unlike React Native. So React Native actually you might have to use third-party libraries. And Flutter, the good thing about Flutter is you can use it in almost any screen or device. But what I mean by use it, you can develop it for any screen or device. But when it comes to React Native, it is developed only for web or mobile devices only. And why Flutter? Sorry, Flutter or React Native? So this is actually, it all boils down to the individual developer, because so it's based on the skill of the developer. But if you want to make a choice between Flutter or React Native, firstly, you should ask yourself, what is your goal? Why are you creating this application? Why are you trying to learn Flutter or React Native? If your goal is, to get a job, then your determining factor has to be the job market. You should know, okay, what is better in the job market, Flutter or React Native, which gives you a better pay, which gives you a better pay and all that. So currently, in most places, since React Native has been up and around for quite some time, I think that goes with the job market. It has a high job market for React Native. But if you want to, build an application just to visualize or just to implement your idea, basically, then okay, so then your determining factor can just be the time it takes to build this app. So if you're taking React Native, you would have to know JavaScript, you would have to know React, and then you should eventually learn React Native. So if you're a developer who has a background or who has enough knowledge in JavaScript and React, then this would be quite easy. It would just be a matter of time since you get the hang of React Native, and that would mean a much faster way of implementation rather than using Flutter, since you already have experience in JavaScript and in React. But if you're new to any of these, and you have the choice between Flutter or React Native, and you have no knowledge of JavaScript or React, then Flutter might be a better option, since all you need to learn is Dart and Flutter. And Dart is it's much more easier to learn Dart than to learn JavaScript and React and then React Native. So yeah, hope. So like I said earlier, it what do you call it? It changes from developer to developer. But yeah, so that is basically the insight of what I had. And what we covered today, I discussed about what Flutter is and why do we use Flutter, what were the advantages and disadvantages. And we compared Flutter and React Native, and we asked the question, Flutter or React Native. So that's it from my end. If there are no questions, we can wrap up, and thank you all for joining.